Chapter 31. Return. Weeks had passed since Enkidu's death. Inanna had been residing at the top of the palace in the centre of Gornya Sharia, spending her days resting in the comforts of her sister Ereshkigal's quarters. The bed was somewhat comfortable, with just enough wood stored to keep the burner going beside her alight. Inanna was also fortunate to have found some leftover dried meat stored atop the palace. With just enough to sustain her, her body was slowly recovering. The wounds on her feet had healed, as had her hands, though she was still unable to clench them firmly. She feared that the bones the iron had penetrated might be broken. Over these harrowingly lonesome weeks, Inanna had watched the supplies of warmth, food, and water slowly dwindle. Now, with at most a day or two of food and warmth remaining, she had to prepare to leave the comforts of the palace tower. Looking outward to the vast expanse of snow and forestry, Inanna knew she was running out of time. Inanna rose from her bed, gently placing each foot on the ground below. The warm iron heater that had been keeping her quarters comfortable was burning on one of its last logs. She placed each foot down, gently putting more weight on them as she stood. The pain from each step had greatly subsided in the past few days, courtesy of the healing vial Enkidu had given her. She knew she must travel great distances in this condition in the coming days. Moving out of the warm room, she was greeted by the freezing halls of the palace, usually kept alive by countless Neanderthal workers. The dark and quiet halls now stood dormant and cold. Inanna clambered down the lower levels of the tower, arriving at a hall very familiar to her. The long stretch of hall was where Palios had used a glider to traverse the skies above the city and to bring the flames of the inferno to the city's walls. She looked at it now, abandoned and desolate. Snow had blown in from the outside winds, and 2 gliders remained toward the end of the hall. She walked toward the side of the opening and looked out over the vast expanse of mountains and forests, knowing that in a day or two she would be traversing them by herself. A thought passed through Inanna's mind. What if she made the last days count by taking a glider as far south as she could? She could travel kilometers in minutes, making her journey southward far shorter than traversing through the dangers of the forests. The only issue with this plan was that she had no one to teach her how to use such technology. Additionally, she had no prior knowledge of how to operate the novel machinery. Inanna contemplated, inspecting the stable gliders and attempting to figure out their basic mechanisms. After spending some time understanding the essential mechanics, pulling the bar upward and downward to change elevation, she decided to ponder her brash plan before committing to such a dangerous activity. Her thoughts raced to Palios. If he could achieve such heights, surely she could in some form as well. Inanna returned to her quarters to rest. Pouring herself water and eating minimal amounts of dried meat, she settled into the warmth of her sister's bed. She looked outside as the sun once again began to set over the cold and desolate landscape. Only 4 logs of wood remained beside the fire, enough to last a day or two at most. Inanna was fighting time. She required more of it to fully heal, yet was limited by the supplies left behind at the palace. Additionally, she could not spend more time atop the palace, as each day she wasted residing in Gornya Sharia was a day further the Neanderthal armies marched south. Inanna rested, knowing one more night's sleep would not fully heal her wounds. She hoped it would make some difference before her inevitable departure when the morning sun rose. The palace tower stood strong against the Arctic blasts of wind that bombarded it constantly. From outside, the faint, warm glow from Inanna's fire was the only source of light in the vast region of darkness that surrounded Gornya Sharia. Inside, Inanna lay in her bed, attempting to rest, yet unable to due to the sounds of the wind battering the glass window in her quarters. she contemplated all she had endured, haunted by the ghosts of those who had died in servitude. She did not feel alone in the tower, as her thoughts and memories occupied a large dwelling within the confines of her mind. Nevertheless, she endured, having been spared from the clutches of death, and at first light she must face the world once more. Over the past few weeks, Inanna had become acclimated to the landscape outside her palace window, watching the seemingly endless winter winds bombard the city's structures, only to be halted by the daily snowfall that accompanied such harrowing weather. The sun rose over the landscape, gently penetrating through the thick cloud cover. It was the only natural warmth Inanna would have during her journey south. She joined it in its ascension and rose from the comfort of her bed. The fire in her quarters was smouldering. Only 2 logs remained, an indicator that the time for her journey was imminent. Her feet had mostly healed, despite the occasional pain each footstep carried. Her stomach injury had also healed, though with a few more weeks, perhaps a month or 2, of rest it would mend entirely. Inanna walked down the stairs, equipped with oversized clothing scavenged from the Neanderthal tower. She was not concerned that it was large and heavy. She knew it would keep her alive for her journey. Accompanying her was a large leather rucksack in which she was storing all essential equipment and supplies she might need. Her only concern was the limited rations she had remaining, enough to last her a few days at most. Inanna approached the hangar, loaded her glider with her supplies, and inspected the launching mechanism. She positioned herself into it and attempted to get accustomed to its mechanisms. She released a slight grin before ejecting the glider outward, considering the irony of meeting her demise this way after all she had endured. However, it was just a fleeting thought. She realigned her concentration to the task at hand. Inanna was thrust out over the city. She braced intensely as her glider picked up speed and glided over the city's various structures. The wind began to lift the glider upward, a relief for Inanna as she gained some confidence that the machine was working. As she drew further away from the palace, she knew she needed to adjust her course southward. Gripping the turning mechanism, Inanna pulled it gently, hoping that what she was doing worked. The glider turned slightly, a positive indicator. She then pulled it further, directing the glider in the right direction. A sense of awe filled Inanna, followed by sheer terror as the adrenaline faded and she became solemnly aware that she was catapulting through the sky, hundreds of meters above the ground, in a tiny wooden glider. As she passed the walls of Gornia Shoria, Inanna looked at the city in solace. She had resided within its walls for several weeks and had endured significant hardships within its structures. She was not the same creature she was when she entered its gates. She had lost everyone, been on the brink of death, and returned. Inanna had changed into a Nin of Summa, who was now returning to her world to contribute to its sustained survival. Her glider hovered above the vast mountain ranges and forests that surround Gornia Shoria. Using the wind below her to casually lift it upward and maintain its longevity in the air, she attempted to fly it as far south as she could. In this process, it became evident to her that she had saved days of travel. As long as she could maintain her bearing and keep the glider moving slowly, she would cut kilometers off her journey and reach India before the Neanderthals make it to the Pannonia Plains, the direction Jack and Ereshkigal's forces moved toward when they abandoned Gornia Shoria. Inanna drew her attention solely to the task at hand, elongating the duration of the glider's flight. As she rocketed through the sky, she saw an eagle fly from above and inspect her craft, most likely having never seen such a thing before. It swooped beside her. Moments passed before it flew off in its own direction, not needing to compete with such a large winged creature as the glider. With every minute in the air, she slowly drew closer to the ground below. The glider glided over the last mountain range it could summit. Inanna knew that she would soon need to land. Looking below, the large pine trees flickered past her field of view. The glider was maintaining speed, but would eventually reach its terminus. Having covered a vast distance, Inanna accepted that her journey was about to end. Ahead, she saw an opening between the large, ancient pine trees that littered the countryside. She maneuvered between them, hoping for a soft landing. Her glider cut through the underbrush of the trees, scraping and damaging the craft. She braced for impact. The glider's left wing got caught on a large branch, cutting into its canopy. It broke the wing off, and Inanna braced as the craft smashed into the snow-covered ground below, shattering the glider into parts and scattering them across the forest surface. Silence filled the air. The forest was far quieter than the open plains of the ice, as the wind could not penetrate its endless sprawl of trees and brush. Inanna rose from the shattered cockpit of the glider to inspect the damage. Scattered remnants surrounded her. She quickly looked for her rucksack and supplies, ensuring the essentials had made it through the landing. Inanna then broke off small pieces of board from the glider and put them in her pack, noting their utility as kindling if needed. With her sword in her holster, her pack over her shoulders, and a bow at hand, Inanna prepared for the long and harrowing journey south. Unsure of how long this would take, she prepared to endure its longevity. Days cycled by in a seemingly endless rotation as Inanna traversed the treacherous landscape of the ice. Moving at a steady pace, she trekked south toward the Indian border. The landscape had become more mountainous in the past few days, a good indicator that she was nearing her destination. The journey became increasingly perilous with each passing day, as the altitude rose and the mountainous region separating the ice from northeastern India grew steeper. Inanna travelled with extreme caution. It was not all unpleasant. Inanna had grown rather fond of the quiet evenings spent camping beneath the stars, with the belt of the Milky Way stretching across the sky above her. The sounds of nature moved in cycles of day and night as she walked, for the ice was primitive. There was no human interference in its intricate ecosystem. Inanna grew to realize that everything in this expanse moved in harmony, feeding itself as a vast, connected living organism attuned to the creatures that lived within it. Inanna felt connected to this, as it put in perspective the vastness of the world and raised the question of where one belongs within it. The landscape changed dramatically as Inanna made her descent down another mountain pass. The snow-covered terrain atop the mountains gave way to a denser, subtropical climate. As she travelled further downward each passing day, the climate continued to grow warmer, an assurance that she was heading in the right direction. Suddenly, through the dense underbrush of the forest, she came across a sight she had not seen for some time. A road. Inanna walked onto the road with the feeling of joy. Had she truly made it back to civilization? And if so, where was she? The road, cut from mud and gravel, local to the forest, had large footsteps within it. She inspected the tracks and saw that they were recently pressed into the road. Suddenly, she heard the sound of an elephant roaring in excitement, an unexpected greeting in such an isolated area. Before she could comprehend its distance, she heard a second roar, the sound of multiple elephants presenting themselves around the bend of the road ahead. She moved toward the sounds in excitement. Around the short corner ahead, Inanna saw 3 men standing, clearing some underbrush with bladed weapons and accompanied by 4 elephants. She looked in awe, having not seen any other living creatures for some time, let alone other humans. "Hello!" she shouted. The word dribbled out as she had not used her vocals for significant time. The men stopped their work and turned to face Inanna. They were shocked to see her, a stranger with a different accent emerging from the dangers of the ice. "Hello, what are you doing this far out? Are you all right?" one of the men asked. Inanna smiled. "I am... Where am I?" she asked. The same man, looking at his fellow workers, shouted in reply, "We are 10 kilometers east of Mathura." Inanna recalled her geography lessons by Palios. "This is India?" she affirmed. "Yes, it is. What is your name?" the man asked. "Inanna." "I am Nin of Sumer," she shouted. The men paused, looking at one another in disbelief, then released a burst of laughter. It was not every day Sumerian royalty emerged from the underbrush in their local region. "My grandmother was Inanna, Nin of Sumer, before me. My family has ruled Uruk for hundreds of years. I had led a journey through the ice I don't know exactly how long ago. I have returned, and I need help," she said with sincerity. The men, picking up on her evidently serious tone, approached her. "Well, it is not every day 3 elephant wranglers come across the Nin of Sumer. Please excuse our disbelief," their leader stated. "I understand the ridiculous nature of my emergence," she grinned. "Could you please take me back to Mathura? My objective is very time-sensitive." The men shed a look of confusion. Their leader, the eldest of the 3, stepped forward. "I am Jangan. We will take you to Mathura. Nin, Sumer, and India have always shared an interwoven history." Inanna looked into the man's eyes, sensing he had a trusting nature. Having never visited India herself, she recalled many stories from her grandmother regarding the kindness of their people and the gentle nature fostered within their culture. "Thank you, Jangan. I appreciate your kindness." Janga inspected Inanna, seeing she was evidently worn and well-travelled. "We do not typically ride the elephants. However, if you need rest, you are welcome to ride atop Rani. She is gentle, but can be quite mischievous," he explained. Inanna looked at the gentle creature, seeing that Rani is already carrying the group's supplies. "If you don't mind, I would appreciate that, even just for a short period. I am recovering from many injuries and am quite exhausted." "Of course, Nin. The elephants take turns carrying the supplies. Besides, if Rani does not wish you to be on her, you will know about it," he said jokingly. Inanna released a sigh of respite, relieved she did not have to work for her transport. She approached Rani and gently gave her a pat. "I would help you atop. However, I do not believe my back will allow it," Jangan explained. His 2 fellow workers lifted her up onto the elephant's back. "Thank you, Jangan. I appreciate your help," Inanna stated with a sigh of relief. The men placed Inanna's supplies atop Rani and began walking down the path, a journey that would eventually lead them to Mathura. Inanna spent the remainder of the day travelling the sprawling mountain ranges. The snow-covered mountains she emerged from slowly declined until they were out of view. "We used the same technique to build roads in Sumer," Inanna explained as she sat atop an elephant. "I'm assuming the elephants find the best natural path through the terrain." Jangan grinned. "That is correct, Nin. We are surveying the region along the ice. This area has been left untouched because we wish to preserve it. We also know that it will aid in connecting the northern regions of India, such as Mathura, to the west more gently. These elephants have greatly aided us in doing that." "You have been doing this for many years?" she asked. "Since I was young," he replied. His eyes reflected genuine affection. "I love nature, and I love these gentle creatures. They gave me purpose, and I am glad they are with us where they are respected and treated well. It gives the elephants as much purpose as it does us. My family sigil is an elephant. My grandmother always loved them. When I was north, I saw a herd of mammoths. Not quite the same creatures, yet equally amazing, especially for an admirer of these gentle beings," Inanna shared with Jangan. "The elephants traversed the land, finding the best places to build road networks, without disrupting the local environment. The paths are winding and may not always be the most direct, yet they always work. If they're good enough for elephants, they are good enough for us, he continued. The elephant wranglers, a respected role in Indian culture, used the elephants to traverse unmanned terrain, carving roads and paths into the landscape. The elephants moved through their environment, causing minimal damage to the ecosystem, adhering to the philosophy that the roads humans carve should respect the natural environment and cause minimal to no impact on the ecological systems they traverse. I have seen a few mammoths in the mountains here, yet very infrequently and definitely not in a herd. You are very lucky to have witnessed such a sight, he responded cheerfully. Ina rested atop her elephant as the group slowly moved through the jungles into a much more temperate climate. After a full day of travelling, she finally arrived at Mathura, an ancient walled city on the outskirts of the mountain regions north of India. In Mathura, Inanna spent the evening recovering. She was greeted by the kingdom's elders and stayed for the night before leaving the following morning for Eden, an ancient valley in rural India, home to the Egyptian Brotherhood and epicenter of the Brotherhood's practices. In Eden resided the largest library in the world, along with all the knowledge and support she would need. Following Isis's request, Inanna would venture to Eden to seek help. Inanna spent her evening writing to her family and kingdom. Being close to Sumer, she felt assurance that her messages would arrive in a timely manner. The first letter was to her family, addressing the key events that had transpired and her intentions to visit Eden before returning home. She explained the context of what Ereshkigal's actions had done, along with her intentions for humanity. As much as she wished to return straight back to Sumer, she knew her job was not done. Knowing that a cataclysm was coming, she had to find the information she needed before returning home. If she returned without answers, the fate of her people would not be optimistic. The second letter, addressed to her council, outlined the Neanderthal plan to invade, emphasizing that an attack was imminent due to the nature of their survival instincts and the incoming cataclysm. These letters contained only small amounts of information, serving as the foundation for her country's preparations. Her plan was to send more detailed communications once she had arrived at Eden. With her head racing with anxious thoughts and constant reminders of the journey she had undertaken thus far, Inanna lay in her quarters and gazed out at the gentle evening sky above Mathura. Though the warm lights in the city mitigated some light pollution, the sky was not as vibrant as it had been in the ice. Despite this, she lay in her bed, staring at the sky, contemplating her next steps, and recovering from all that had happened to her. As the morning sun shone over the city's vibrantly decorated walls, Inanna set out on horseback toward Eden. She was accompanied by an escort of sentries who would ensure her safe passage. Her small convoy travelled with haste, driven by the urgency of her mission. Eden was a few hundred kilometres away from Mathura. However, she travelled swiftly, and within a week she arrived at the gates of Eden. Inanna dismounted from her horse and took in the beautiful, picturesque landscape surrounding her. Ahead, she saw a single path cut through a rolling grassy field. In the distance, a large, circular mountain range stood out against the terrain. At its opening, large wooden gates marked the only entrance and exit to Eden, the sacred home of the Brotherhood of the Serpent. The leader of Inanna's escort halted his soldiers. "Nin, we will travel no further. This land is not for us," he declared. Inanna collected her supplies from her horse. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your escort. Please remind the elders of India that if they require anything at all, the kingdom of Sumer is always here to support." With a gentle nodding gesture, the soldiers turned their horses around and commenced their journey back to Mathura. Inanna looked in splendour at the natural beauty of Eden. Taking a deep breath and collecting herself, she walked toward its gates, hoping to find the answers she needed within its vast array of ancient knowledge and wisdom.